The medical station drifted through empty space like a dying star. Dr. Rinva pressed her hand against the cold observation window and watched another transport pod launch into the void. Inside were bodies. 17 more Taeli who would never see their homeworld again. She had stopped counting after the first 1,000 deaths. The numbers meant nothing anymore when everyone you loved was already gone. Behind her, the machines keeping the last survivors alive hummed and beeped in a rhythm she knew too well. 347 patients remained in this facility. Yesterday there had been 412. The red veil plague consumed them faster each day. Their crystalline respiratory systems turned gray, then black, then stopped working entirely. The children went first. Always the children. "Doctor, we are receiving another transmission from the perimeter." The young nurse, Sala, looked up from her console. Her own breathing crystals showed early-stage infection. She had maybe 2 weeks left. "Let me guess. The Council ships are reminding us to stay inside the quarantine zone." Rinva did not bother hiding the bitterness in her voice. "Yes, the same message. Automated. They do not even speak to us anymore." The quarantine had been in place for 8 months. 8 months since the Galactic Council decided that saving the Taeli people was not worth the risk. The plague might spread to other species. Better to let one civilization die than endanger the whole galaxy. That was the logical choice. That was what Representative Quell of the Synthetic Alliance had explained in their cold, mechanical voice during the council session. Rinva had watched that session on the public broadcasts. She had listened as species after species voted to abandon her people. Some looked uncomfortable, some looked sad, but they all voted the same way. The mathematics were simple. The Taeli numbered only 12 million across 3 colony worlds. The Galactic Council represented 800 billion citizens. Why risk the many for the few? Only one delegation had voted against the quarantine. A small group of newcomers who had joined the council just 8 years ago. Humans. They had stood up in that chamber and argued for hours about rights and dignity and the obligation to help those in need. The other species had smiled at them like adults smiling at naive children. How sweet. How innocent. They would learn. The humans lost the vote 47-1. Rinva turned away from the window and moved through the medical bay. Her patients lay in rows of beds, some sleeping, some staring at nothing. She checked vital signs and adjusted medication doses even though she knew it only delayed the inevitable. They had no cure. They had no hope. They had only time, and that was running out along with their life support power cells. "Doctor, something is happening at the perimeter." Sala's voice carried a note of fear. "A ship is approaching the quarantine boundary." Rinva felt her heart sink. Had the council finally decided to make sure no Taeli escaped? Were they sending a fleet to finish what the plague had started? "What kind of ship?" "Unknown configuration." "Wait, they are transmitting identification codes. It is registered to Earth, the humans." The humans. Rinva remembered their representative at the council session. A woman with dark skin and steel in her voice, who had refused to stop speaking even when the council moderator told her time was up. What were they doing here? "They are crossing the quarantine line." Sala's hands moved across her console. "Council patrol ships are hailing them, ordering them to turn back immediately." "Are they turning back?" "No, they are still coming toward us, fast." Rinva moved to the communication station and pulled up the external feeds. She could see the human ship now, smaller than the council patrol vessels but moving with clear purpose. The council ships were forming a blockade pattern, but the human vessel slipped between them like water through fingers. "This is Council Patrol Group 7 to unidentified human vessel. You are violating quarantine protocols. Turn back immediately or face immediate expulsion from council membership." The transmission crackled through the speakers. The human ship did not slow down. "Final warning, turn back now." Still the ship came closer. Rinva held her breath. Would they actually fire on the humans? Would this end with more death? Then a new voice came through the communication system. Human, male, calm. This is Captain Davis of the Earth vessel Wanderer. We have received distress signals from this facility. We are responding under the right of sapient aid. We are not requesting permission. The Council has already addressed this situation. The quarantine stands. You have no authority here. Then I guess we are about to have a disagreement. Wanderer out. The channel closed. The human ship continued its approach. The Council vessels did not fire. They simply watched as the Wanderer entered the quarantine zone and headed straight for the medical station. Rinva could not believe what she was seeing. They were actually coming. After 8 months of isolation and death and abandonment, someone was actually coming to help them. Sala, prepare the docking bay. Clear space for whatever they bring. But Doctor, what if the Council retaliates? What if they expel the humans from the Council? Then the humans will be outcasts just like us. Rinva felt something she had not felt in months. It took her a moment to recognize it. Hope. But at least we will not die alone. The Wanderer grew larger in the observation window. Rinva could see lights along its hull, airlocks preparing to extend docking tubes. Inside those tubes would be humans, people who had crossed a quarantine line that had kept out the entire galaxy, people who had ignored their own government's political future to answer a distress call from a dying species they had never even met. The docking clamps engaged with a heavy thud that echoed through the station. Rinva straightened her medical robes and moved toward the airlock. Whatever came next, whatever price the humans paid for this choice, she would make sure every Talai who survived remembered this moment. The moment when someone finally stood with them. The airlock hissed open and Dr. Akoy stepped through wearing a full hazard suit that made her look like she was ready to walk on a sun. Behind her came 6 more humans, all suited up, all carrying equipment cases that hummed with refrigeration units. Rinva had expected soldiers or maybe politicians. Instead, she got doctors and scientists. I am Dr. Akoy from the Earth Medical Corps. The human woman's voice came through a translator attached to her suit. We are here to help. Please direct us to your most critical patients. Rinva did not waste time with questions or formalities. She led them into the medical bay where the dying lay in rows. The humans moved quickly, their eyes scanning the equipment and the patients with practiced efficiency. One of them, a young man with red hair, immediately knelt beside a Talai child whose breathing crystals had turned almost completely black. How long has she been in this state? He asked, his hands already pulling diagnostic tools from his case. 2 days, maybe 3, she will not survive the night. Rinva watched as the human ran a scanner over the child's crystalline structures. We have tried everything. There is no cure. There is always a cure. Dr. Akoy moved beside her colleague. We just have not found it yet. That changes today. The humans worked with a speed and focus that Rinva had never seen before. They took samples, ran tests, shared data across their networked systems. Within an hour, they had set up a portable laboratory in one of the station's cargo bays. Within 2 hours, they had mapped the complete genetic structure of the Red Veil Plague. This is fascinating. Dr. Akoy stared at her display screen, her eyes moving rapidly across columns of data, and deeply disturbing. What did you find? Rinva leaned closer, trying to make sense of the human notation systems. This is not a natural disease. Look at these sequences here. They are too perfect, too targeted. Someone engineered this plague specifically to attack Talai respiratory biology. The words hit Rinva like a physical blow. Engineered. You mean someone created this deliberately? Someone wanted us to die? That is exactly what I mean. Dr. Akoy's jaw tightened. This is not just a medical crisis. This is a crime scene. Before Rinva could respond, alarms began blaring throughout the station. Sala's voice came over the intercom, shaking with fear. Doctor, Council fleet groups are arriving at the quarantine perimeter. Multiple ships. They are demanding the humans leave immediately. Captain Davis appeared on the communication screen, his face calm despite the situation. "We are not leaving. Tell your people to prepare for additional human vessels. Earth is sending support." "Captain, the Council will expel humanity from membership. You will lose everything you have gained in 8 years." Rinva felt guilty even as she spoke. These people were risking so much for strangers. "We lose nothing that matters," Davis smiled, and it was not a friendly expression. "We lose a seat at a table where people vote to let children die. I think we will survive." The Council's response came within minutes. A transmission from Representative Quell filled every screen on the station. "The human action is reckless and irresponsible. The plague poses an unacceptable risk to galactic civilization. Earth has violated Council protocols and will face consequences. All human vessels must withdraw immediately or face military enforcement." Dr. Akoi did not even look up from her work. "Tell them we will leave when we are done, not before." More human ships began arriving through the night. They brought medical supplies, research equipment, and hundreds of personnel. They set up a field hospital in the quarantine zone itself, moving infected tali from the failing station to newer, better facilities. They worked in shifts, never stopping, never slowing down. Rinva worked alongside them, translating tali medical knowledge and helping them understand the unique biology they were trying to save. She watched Dr. Akoi test compound after compound, searching for something that could stop the red veil from destroying crystalline tissue. The human doctor had been awake for 30 hours straight when she finally made a breakthrough. "I think I have something." Akoi's hands trembled slightly as she prepared a treatment injection. "It is based on antiretroviral techniques we developed for Earth diseases, modified for crystalline biology. It should stop the plague from replicating." Rinva felt hope and terror mixing in her chest. Only one way to find out. Akoi moved to the nearest critical patient, a young male whose crystals had gone completely gray. She administered the injection and stepped back. "Now we wait." They waited for 6 hours. Rinva barely breathed during that time. The other humans continued their work around them, but everyone kept glancing at the patient, watching for any change. Then slowly the gray color began to recede. The crystals started clearing from the edges, returning to their natural blue-green shade. The patient's vital signs stabilized, improved. He opened his eyes. "It works." Rinva felt tears running down her face. "Your medicine works." Dr. Akoi allowed herself a small smile. "It works on one patient. Let us see if it works on more." They began administering the treatment to other critical patients. The success rate was not perfect. Some patients were too far gone, their crystals too damaged to recover. But 73% of those treated began to improve. 73% lived when they should have died. The news spread through the tali survivors like electricity. People who had resigned themselves to death began to hope again. Parents held their children closer, knowing they might actually have a future. But outside the quarantine zone, the Council fleet continued to grow. 42 ships now surrounded the area where humans worked to save tali lives. They had given a 12-hour deadline for human withdrawal. 8 hours remained. Captain Davis stood on the bridge of his ship and opened a channel to all human vessels. "Anyone who wants to leave before this gets ugly, do it now. No one will think less of you." Not a single ship moved. "All right then." Davis settled into his command chair. "Let us show them what humanity stands for." Admiral Park stood in the observation deck of the flagship Defiant and counted the enemy ships. 42 Council vessels formed a perfect blockade pattern around the quarantine zone. Her own fleet numbered only 17 ships. The math was not in humanity's favor, but then again, the math had never stopped humans from doing what they believed was right. "Admiral, Council Command is hailing us again." Her communications officer looked tired. They had been receiving the same threats for hours now. Put them through. Representative Quell's synthesized voice filled the bridge. Admiral Park, you have 4 hours remaining to withdraw your forces. After that, we will be forced to remove you by military action. This is not a threat. This is a promise. Representative Quell, we have 600,000 Taili patients who need treatment. Treatment only we can provide. Are you really willing to kill them to make a point? We are willing to protect 800 billion Council citizens from a potential plague outbreak. Your emotional response to this situation is clouding your judgment. And your logical response is missing something important. Park leaned forward. We are not leaving. You will have to go through us to stop the medical work. Are you prepared to fire on unarmed hospital ships? Because that is what you will be doing. The whole galaxy will watch you do it. Quell was silent for a moment. Your species joined the Council 8 years ago. You were welcomed. You were given opportunities. Why would you throw that away for people you do not even know? Because that is what decent people do. They help when help is needed. If you do not understand that, then maybe we do not belong in your council anyway. The transmission ended. Park turned to her crew. All ships maintain defensive positions. Do not power weapons unless fired upon first. We are not here to start a war. We are here to prevent one. Down on the medical station, Dr. Okoye made another discovery. She had been analyzing the plague's genetic structure for 3 straight days, and the more she looked, the more evidence she found of deliberate engineering. But there was something else now, a signature in the code, a marker that identified who had created it. She called Captain Davis to her laboratory and showed him the data. This sequence here appears in biological weapons developed by the Krell Consortium. I cross-referenced it with known Krell research papers. It is a perfect match. Davis felt his blood run cold. The Krell are a council member species, one of the founding members. Are you telling me they created this plague? I am telling you they created the base framework. Someone modified it to target Taili biology specifically. The Krell have been mining operations in this sector for decades. They wanted this space. The Taili were in the way. So they engineered a plague to wipe them out and make it look natural. Davis ran his hand through his hair. We need to report this immediately. To who? The Council. The same Council that is threatening to attack us for trying to save these people. You think they will believe us? Davis thought about it. Maybe not the Council, but the galactic public might. Sala, can you set up a live broadcast? I want every news network in the galaxy to receive this. Within an hour, Dr. Okoye's findings were spreading across the galactic information networks. The evidence was clear, detailed, and damning. The Krell Consortium had committed genocide disguised as a natural disaster. They had killed 11 million Taili and would have killed them all if the humans had not interfered. The reaction was immediate and explosive. Protests erupted on dozens of council worlds. Citizens demanded answers. They demanded justice. How many other natural disasters had actually been engineered extinctions? How many species had the council let die while the real killers walked free? On a ship at the edge of the council fleet, something unexpected happened. The Lyran medical vessel Healing Wind broke formation and moved toward the human position. Its captain, an elderly Lyran named Tresh, broadcast a message on open channels. I became a doctor to save lives. I took an oath to preserve life wherever I found it. The humans are honoring that oath. My own government is threatening them for it. I choose to stand with those who heal rather than those who threaten. Any Lyran who wishes to join me is welcome. 2 more Lyran ships broke formation. Then a small vessel from the Avian Collective. Then a research ship crewed by members of a species most had never heard of. One by one, ships began leaving the council blockade and joining the humans. Representative Quell watched this happen from their command vessel and experienced something unusual for a synthetic being: doubt. The programming that governed their decisions had always prioritized efficiency and logical outcomes. The Talai quarantine had been efficient, logical, let a small population die to protect a larger one. Simple mathematics. But the humans had introduced a variable Quell had not calculated. They had shown what the Council had become, an organization that made efficient decisions while losing sight of why those decisions mattered. The Talai were not numbers in a calculation. They were people, living beings with families and dreams and the right to exist. Quell began reviewing historical council decisions, searching through centuries of data. A pattern emerged. Species helped when it was convenient, abandoned when it was not. The strong protected, the weak sacrificed, always justified by mathematics and logic, always missing the fundamental question: what kind of civilization does this create? The deadline came and went. The council fleet did not fire. How could they? Half the galaxy was watching. Firing on human hospital ships would destroy whatever moral authority the council still claimed. But they could not back down either, not without admitting they had been wrong. The standoff continued. Days passed. Human doctors kept working. More Talai recovered. The cure's success rate improved to 89% as Dr. Okoye refined the treatment. Then Rinva did something no one expected. She gathered every Talai who could walk and set up broadcast equipment in the main medical bay. She opened a live channel to the entire galaxy. My name is Dr. Rinva. 8 months ago, the Galactic Council sentenced my people to death. They called it quarantine, but we knew what it meant. We were inconvenient, we were expendable, we were forgotten. She paused, looking directly into the camera. Then the humans came, they crossed your quarantine line. They risked everything to give us a chance to live. Look around me. These are Talai children who should be dead. These are families who should be extinct. We are here because one species refused to accept that some people are worth saving, and others are not. Behind her, hundreds of Talai stood together, many holding human medical personnel by the hand. Parents lifted children who had been dying a week ago. The image was powerful, undeniable, and broadcast across every network in civilized space. You ask what makes humanity special, Rinva continued. This. They stood with us when we had nothing, when everyone else walked away. That is civilization. That is what your council forgot. The transmission went viral. Within hours, it had been viewed by billions. Public opinion turned decisively against the council's position. The blockade became politically impossible to maintain. Representative Quell made a decision. They sent a private message to Admiral Park. We need to talk. The private meeting took place on a neutral shuttle halfway between the council fleet and the human position. Admiral Park arrived with only one aide. Representative Quell came alone, their synthetic body requiring no life support or protection. You wanted to talk. Park sat across from the being who had led the vote to abandon the Talai. I am listening. Quell's optical sensors focused on her, with an intensity that would have been uncomfortable if Park had not spent years negotiating with species far stranger than synthetic intelligences. I have reviewed 417 years of council decisions. I found 38 cases where species requested aid during existential crises. 12 were helped, 26 were abandoned. The pattern is clear. We help those who are useful. We abandon those who are not. That is a pretty dark admission from a council representative. It is an accurate one. My programming prioritizes efficiency and logical outcomes. For centuries, I believed the council operated the same way. Efficient, logical, optimal. Quell paused, and Park got the distinct impression the synthetic was struggling with something. But I am beginning to understand that efficiency without purpose is meaningless. Your species introduced a variable I did not calculate. Compassion as a governing principle rather than an occasional luxury. We are not perfect. We have made terrible mistakes throughout our history, but we learned something important. Civilization is not measured by how you treat the strong and useful. It is measured by how you treat the weak and vulnerable. I am a synthetic being. I do not feel emotions the way biological entities do, but I can process concepts, calculate outcomes, and I have calculated that a civilization built on abandoning the inconvenient will eventually abandon everyone. Quell's voice carried something that might have been regret. The humans are right. The council is wrong, but I cannot say this publicly without destroying the institution entirely. Maybe it should be destroyed. Park leaned forward. Maybe something better should take its place. Before Quell could respond, both their communication devices erupted with emergency alerts. The Krell Consortium had just issued a statement denying all allegations of biological warfare. They claimed the evidence was fabricated by humans seeking to gain galactic sympathy. They demanded the immediate arrest of Dr. Akoy for spreading false information. And they had sent a fleet to enforce their demands. Park and Quell returned to their respective flagships immediately. The situation had just become exponentially more dangerous. The Krell did not send small fleets. They sent armadas designed to intimidate and overwhelm. 78 Krell warships emerged from faster-than-light travel at the edge of the system. They were massive vessels, each one capable of reducing a planet to rubble. They formed attack patterns and began moving toward the quarantine zone. The Krell commander broadcast a simple message. Surrender the human called Akoy and all evidence of your false claims. Withdraw from Talai space immediately. You have 6 hours to comply. After that, we will remove you by force. Admiral Park looked at her 17 ships and the handful of defectors who had joined them. Against 78 Krell warships, they would last maybe 10 minutes in direct combat. Captain Davis contacted her from the Wanderer. Admiral, we need to evacuate the medical facilities. Get the Talai survivors to safety before the Krell arrive. Where exactly would they be safe? The Krell will hunt them down wherever they go. They cannot leave witnesses to their genocide. Park watched the Krell fleet advance on her tactical display. We hold position. We buy time. Time for what? I am not sure yet, but running is not an option. Down on the medical station, Dr. Akoy continued working as if there were no fleet of warships heading toward her. She had 600,000 patients to treat and not enough time to treat them all. The Krell threat was someone else's problem. Saving lives was hers. But she was not the only one refusing to panic. Rinva organized the Talai survivors into support teams. Those who could walk helped those who could not. Those who had recovered first began training in basic medical procedures to assist the overwhelmed human staff. The Talai had spent 8 months dying. They had no intention of going back to that now. If the Krell come, they will have to go through all of us, Rinva told her people. We do not die quietly anymore. The 6 hours ticked down. 4 hours, 2 hours, 1 hour. The Krell fleet continued its relentless approach. The Council fleet, caught between the humans they had been blockading and the Krell they technically had treaties with, did nothing. They simply watched. Then, 30 minutes before the Krell deadline, something changed. New ships began arriving in the system. Lots of them. They bore the markings of species from all across the Council. Medical vessels, defense ships, even some civilian transports that had been hastily armed. They came from worlds where Rinva's broadcast had been seen. They came from populations who had decided that watching genocide happen was no longer acceptable. A transmission came from the lead ship of the new arrivals. This is Captain Tresh of the Lyran Defense Coalition. We stand with the humans. We stand with the Talai. The Krell will not commit murder in our names. More ships kept arriving. The force grew from dozens to hundreds. Species that had barely spoken to each other in decades suddenly found common cause. They might not agree on politics or trade or territory, but they agreed on this. The Krell had to be stopped. The Krell commander found himself facing not 17 ships but over 200. His numerical advantage had evaporated. Worse, his actions were being broadcast across the galaxy in real time. If he attacked now, It would not be a quiet suppression of evidence. It would be an act of war against multiple species simultaneously. The Krell fleet stopped advancing. They held position, weapons powered but not firing, a standoff within a standoff. Representative Quell made another private call to Admiral Park. I am going to do something unprecedented. I am going to tell the truth in a public council session about the Krell, about our failures, about all of it. They will destroy you politically. Perhaps, but your species has taught me something. Some things are more important than self-preservation. The council needs to know what it has become, even if that knowledge breaks it. You are taking a hell of a risk. I am a synthetic being. I can be rebuilt. The council's moral authority cannot, not after this. Quell convened an emergency public session of the Galactic Council. Every species sent representatives. Every major news network covered it. Billions watched as Quell presented the complete evidence of Krell biological warfare, not just against the Tali, but against 3 other species over the past 4 centuries. 4 genocides disguised as natural disasters. 4 civilizations erased for resources and territory. The reaction was seismic. Council species began demanding investigations. The Krell delegation walked out of the chambers. Within hours, several Krell colony worlds declared independence from the consortium, refusing to be associated with their government's crimes. The Krell fleet at the quarantine zone faced a choice: attack and confirm their guilt, or withdraw and face justice. Their commander chose withdrawal. The 78 warships turned and began leaving the system. Admiral Park allowed herself a moment of relief before turning back to her crew. All right, people, back to work. We still have patients to protect and a medical mission to complete. Dr. Okoye looked up from her laboratory as news of the Krell withdrawal reached her. She nodded once, satisfied, then returned to her work. She had just developed a version of the cure that could be mass-produced. Time to save more lives. 3 weeks after the Krell fleet withdrew, Dr. Okoye finally slept for more than 4 hours at a time. The treatment production had been automated. Teams of human and Tali medical workers could now manufacture the cure in quantities large enough to treat thousands of patients per day. The crisis had shifted from desperate survival to methodical recovery. But peace never lasted long in the galaxy. A small human transport carrying medical supplies to the Tali homeworld vanished near the outer rim. No distress signal, no debris field, just gone. Then another ship disappeared, and another. Within a week, 7 human vessels had been lost along with their crews, 214 people missing. Admiral Park studied the disappearance patterns in her command center. All the ships had been traveling alone. All had been carrying humanitarian supplies. All had vanished in sectors near former Krell Consortium territory. They are sending a message, her tactical officer said quietly. The Krell might have withdrawn their fleet, but they have not accepted defeat. No, they have not. Park pulled up star charts showing Krell space. The consortium had fractured after Quell's revelations. Dozens of colony worlds had declared independence, but the core Krell government remained intact, angry, and looking for revenge. Find me those ships, whatever it takes. The search led to a Krell black site facility hidden in an asteroid field. Long-range scans detected human life signs inside. Park assembled a rescue force of 20 ships, including several Tali defense vessels that had volunteered to help. Rinva commanded one of those Tali ships. She had never trained as a military officer, but she had learned to lead during 8 months of watching her people die. Her ship, the Hope Stand, was a converted medical vessel with barely functional weapons, but she refused to stay behind while humans who had saved her people were in danger. The rescue force approached the black site facility carefully. No Krell ships defended it. That made Park nervous. The Krell were many things, but careless was not one of them. This feels like a trap, Captain Davis said over the communication channel. Probably is. Park authorized her ships to advance anyway, but we are not leaving our people in there. The facility's defenses activated as they approached. Automated weapons platforms emerged from the asteroids, firing plasma bolts and missiles. The battle was brief but intense. Park's ships destroyed the platforms systematically while taking minimal damage. Too easy. Definitely a trap. They found the human prisoners in holding cells deep inside the facility. All alive. All unharmed. Park's relief lasted exactly as long as it took her to realize what the Krell had actually been doing. They were bait, Davis said, his voice tight with anger. The Krell wanted us to come here. They wanted us concentrated in one place. The Krell main fleet emerged from faster-than-light travel on all sides of the asteroid field. 96 warships surrounded Park's 20-vessel rescue force. The Krell had learned from their last encounter. This time they had overwhelming numbers and the element of surprise. The Krell commander's transmission was almost cheerful. Admiral Park, you have been kind enough to deliver yourselves to us. We will make this simple. Surrender now and we will only execute your military personnel. Resist and everyone dies. You have 5 minutes to decide. Park looked at her tactical display. No way out. No reinforcements close enough to help. She had walked into exactly the trap she had seen coming and done it anyway because leaving people behind was not an option. All ships power up weapons, prepare for combat. She opened a channel to her entire force. I will not order anyone to die here today. If you want to surrender, I will not blame you, but I am not giving these murderers the satisfaction. Not a single ship moved to surrender. The Talai ship Hope Stand positioned itself at the front of the formation. Rinva's voice came over the communication network, calm and clear. Admiral Park, I am going to do something probably very stupid. When I give the signal, take your fleet and run. Get back to the quarantine zone. Protect the patients who cannot fight. Rinva, what are you planning? The Talai owe humanity a debt we can never repay, but we can try. Today we stand with you. Before Park could respond, Rinva opened a direct channel to the Krell commander. This is Dr. Rinva of the Talai Medical Defense Force. You wanted to finish killing my people. Here I am. Come get me. The Hope Stand accelerated toward the Krell fleet, alone. The Talai ship was slow, poorly armed, and no match for even one Krell warship. Against 96, it was suicide. But something happened that the Krell had not anticipated. The other Talai ships broke formation and followed Rinva. Then the Lyran vessels. Then the ships from the smaller species who had joined the coalition. They all accelerated toward the Krell fleet, weapons firing, creating a corridor of chaos. Go now, Rinva transmitted to Park, while they are focused on us. Admiral Park faced the hardest decision of her career. Accept the sacrifice and save most of her people, or stay and watch everyone die together. The logical choice was obvious. The human choice was harder. She chose logic. All human ships full speed to the edge of the field. We are leaving. The human vessels accelerated away from the battle while their allies bought them time with their lives. Park watched on her displays as the Hope Stand took hit after hit, shields failing, hull breaching. Rinva kept fighting anyway, her medical ship's pathetic weapons barely scratching Krell armor. Then something unexpected happened. The Hope Stand did not explode when its shields failed. Instead, it rammed directly into a Krell command vessel, the collision tearing both ships apart. Rinva's final transmission was 2 words. We stand. The impact triggered a chain reaction. Debris from the collision damaged 3 more Krell ships. The Talai and their allies pressed their attack with reckless abandon, not trying to win, but to inflict as much damage as possible before they fell. The human ships reached the edge of the asteroid field and jumped to faster-than-light speed. They escaped. 17 ships and 143 crew members saved. but they left behind 8 Allied vessels and over 400 people who had sacrificed themselves to make that escape possible. Park sat in her command chair as the stars streaked past, feeling the weight of those deaths. They had come to rescue prisoners. They had lost friends instead. The Krell had won this round. But as she began planning her next move, a communication came through from an unexpected source. Representative Quell's synthesized voice carried an emotion Park had never heard from the synthetic being before: anger. Admiral Park, the Council has just received word of the Krell attack. We are voting within the hour on a response. I believe you will find the results satisfactory. What kind of response? The kind that ends the Krell consortium permanently. Your species taught us that some lines cannot be crossed. The Krell have crossed them all. It is time the galaxy stood together. Park allowed herself a grim smile. Rinva had bought more than an escape with her sacrifice. She had bought the outrage needed to finally unite the galaxy against the real enemy. The vote took 47 minutes. When it finished, the Galactic Council had authorized full military intervention against the Krell Consortium. Not sanctions, not diplomatic pressure. War. Species that had not fired weapons in centuries activated ancient defense fleets. The Council moved with a unity it had not shown in generations. But the authorization came too late to save Rinva. She died in the vacuum of space, her medical ship torn apart, her sacrifice buying time for others to escape. When Admiral Park received confirmation of her death, she stood alone in her quarters and allowed herself exactly 5 minutes to grieve. Then she returned to her command center and began planning how to make that sacrifice matter. The war against the Krell Consortium lasted 6 weeks. It was not much of a contest. The Krell had numbers and weapons, but they faced a coalition of 42 species who had finally remembered what civilization actually meant. The Krell fought hard, but they fought alone. Their former allies abandoned them. Their colonies surrendered rather than die for a government that had committed genocide. The humans did something during that war that confused many species and impressed others. They took prisoners. When Krell ships surrendered, human vessels accepted. When Krell life pods ejected from destroyed ships, human crews recovered them. They treated injured Krell with the same medical care they gave their own wounded. Admiral Park explained it simply during a strategy session. We are not fighting to prove we can kill. We are fighting to prove that some principles matter more than revenge. If we become monsters to defeat monsters, what have we won? Dr. Akoy, still working in the quarantine zone, received injured Krell soldiers in her medical facilities. She treated their wounds, saved their lives, and sent them to detention centers. Some of the Krell could not understand why their enemy was healing them. One young soldier, barely old enough to serve, asked her directly, "Why do you help us? We tried to kill you. We would have killed all the Talai if you had not stopped us." Akoy looked at him with tired eyes. "Because you are a person. Because healing is what I do. Because the war ends eventually, and when it does, I want to be able to look at myself and know I stayed who I was meant to be." The Krell Consortium fell on a Tuesday. The government leadership surrendered to Council forces rather than face complete destruction. They were arrested and transported to a tribunal where they would answer for 4 genocides across 4 centuries. The Krell colony worlds, free from consortium control, immediately began reforming their governments along more democratic lines. One of those reformed Krell governments sent a representative to the medical station in the quarantine zone. The representative was an older Krell female named Sirth, who had spent her entire life opposing her government's expansion policies. She met with the surviving Talai leaders and offered something unprecedented. "We cannot undo what was done. We cannot bring back your dead, but we can try to build something better." Sirth presented a data crystal containing complete records of Krell crimes. "This is everything, every attack, every engineered plague, every conspiracy. Use it to make sure this never happens again." The Tailai accepted the offering, though the pain was still too fresh for forgiveness. That would take time, maybe generations, but it was a start. 3 months after the war ended, the Galactic Council convened a special session. They were voting on a new charter, one that Representative Quell had written with input from dozens of species. The core principle was simple: aid to species in crisis was not optional. It was mandatory. Any council member had the right to request help, and the council was obligated to provide it. No more votes on whether people deserve to live. No more efficient calculations that left species to die. The charter passed unanimously. The humans, who had started all of this by refusing to abandon the Tailai, were offered a leadership position in the restructured council. Admiral Park turned it down. "We appreciate the offer, but we are explorers and helpers. We are not interested in ruling anyone. Give that position to someone who wants it." Instead, the humans took charge of something they called the Galactic Medical and Aid Response. It was a fleet of hospital ships and relief vessels that would respond to crises anywhere in Council space. Dr. Akoi accepted the position of Chief Medical Officer, though she insisted on spending at least half her time in the field rather than behind a desk. The Tailai population stabilized at 800,000 survivors. It was a fraction of what they had been, but it was enough to rebuild. They established new colonies, created new art, built new lives. They never forgot the 11 million they had lost, but they chose to honor those deaths by living fully. A year after the quarantine ended, the Tailai unveiled a memorial at the edge of the former quarantine zone. It was a massive crystalline structure visible from space, inscribed with names. 11,377,000 Tailai who had died from the plague. And beneath those names, in smaller script, the names of every being who had helped save those who remained. 3 human names appeared on that memorial: medical workers who had contracted the red veil while treating patients and had not survived. Their families attended the dedication ceremony and were honored as heroes by people they had never met but had died trying to save. Rinva's name was there too, along with the 400 others who had sacrificed themselves at the Black Site facility. Their ships had been recovered from the asteroid field and given proper funerals according to their various cultural traditions. The Tailai insisted on being present at every service. At the memorial dedication, Sala, the young nurse who had survived the plague, gave a speech to the assembled crowd of thousands. "We were forgotten by the galaxy, left to die because saving us was inconvenient. Then one species said no. One species decided that every life matters, not because we were useful, not because we were important, but because we were alive and needed help." She paused, looking at the human delegation in the front row. "The humans did not save us because they had to. They saved us because they chose to. That choice changed everything. It changed us. It changed the council. It changed what civilization means." She gestured to the memorial behind her. "These names represent loss, but they also represent hope. Hope that when the next crisis comes, when the next species faces extinction, the galaxy will remember this moment. We will remember that we are stronger when we stand together, that we are better when we help rather than abandon, that we are civilized not because of our technology or our territories, but because of how we treat those who cannot defend themselves." Dr. Akoi stood near the back of the crowd, listening. Beside her stood several of her first Tailai patients, the children she had treated in those desperate early days. They were healthy now, growing, learning. One of them, a young girl whose crystalline structures had been completely black when Akoi first saw her, tugged on her sleeve. "Dr. Akoi, why did you come help us? You did not know us." Akoi knelt down to the child's level. "I came because you needed help. That is reason enough." "But you almost died. Lots of humans almost died. Was it worth it?" Akoi looked at the 800,000 Tailai scattered across the memorial grounds. She thought about Rinva and her sacrifice. She thought about the galaxy that had changed because humans had refused to walk away. "Yes," she said simply, "it was worth it." The child smiled and ran off to play with her friends. Akoi watched them go, these children who had been given a future because people chose compassion over convenience. That was humanity's gift to the galaxy. Not technology, not military power. Simply the stubborn insistence that every life mattered and that standing with the vulnerable was not weakness but strength. The memorial ceremony ended. The crowds dispersed. The ships in orbit prepared to depart. But the names on that crystalline monument would remain forever, a reminder to anyone who visited. A reminder that the galaxy had once abandoned a dying species. And one species had said no. And in saying no, they had changed everything.